You see a budding rivalry coming to the summit between these two. There's words between Ant-Man and Jamal Murray.
Really? Oh, so that's how you're gonna play it. You gonna do this? Okay, fine. That's all I needed. That's all I needed for him to do that, and it became personal with me.
They're establishing there. They double-teamed him and then kicked Jamal out. It's kind of a triple switch.
And now a steal. This could be fun. Edwards!
Oh, there's a steal by Edwards. Here he comes, and there he goes.
If you're gonna be a complete basketball player, you gotta be able to play both ends. And in playing both ends, you can't just score, you gotta be able to play defense as well.
Corner, Edwards, and shoots. Timeout.
When looking through the entirety of NBA history, there's been a total of 5 players ever to average 28 points per game at the age of 22 or younger and make the conference finals. Those players are the following: Rick Barry, 1967, Kareem, 1970, Kobe, 01, Luka, 2022, and now Anthony Edwards in 2024. And out of those 5 players, Ant pending, only one of them won a championship in said season, that being Kobe Bean Bryant in 2001. I mean, that list right there is some of the best players in NBA history, and all those guys are surefire Hall of Famers. But when talking about 01 Kobe, 70 Kareem, a young Luka, a young Rick Barry, what do all those guys have in common? Everyone knew they were good young players and had potential to be great. But when they made the conference finals, made it so young, playing so well, they kind of got the label as the next one up. And Ant Edwards in these playoffs, he's earned that label and quite frankly, taken it from some other players. As when you play the Phoenix Suns with Kevin Durant, Booker, Bradley Beal, and sweep them 4-0, that's a statement. But when you play the defending NBA champions, take them 7 games, beat them on their home court, that's not a statement, that's historic. And this Game 7 in Denver, much like the series, twists, turns, unpredictable, and in the end, left really every NBA fan happy who's not a Nuggets fan. And you gotta give tons of credit to McDaniels, Mike Conley, their role players. You had Naz Reid getting big buckets, Rudy Gobert hitting 18-foot fadeaways like a prime KG. The Zest Man played good, and of course Anthony Edwards had his moments. And most times when I watch games, I'll make mental notes here and there, things I want to pinpoint talk about in an upcoming video. And one thing I made sure to note is that Denver's defense guarding Edwards the way they were guarding him. There were 2 guys all times watching him, 1 guy in the paint. It was basically the mini Jordan rules. Denver in Game 7, they said, Edwards, you're not beating us. And even then, Edwards, despite a bad shooting night, impacted the game in countless other ways. And looking at his stat line, 16 points, 8 boards, 7 assists, 6 of 24 shooting, 2 of 10 from deep. Now those stats right there, far from great. But if you watch the game, it didn't feel like Edwards was really having that awful of a night. Maybe it's just me. But Edwards in this game, I thought, impacted it as much more than a score. And when you see that number, 6 of 24, what do you think of? Kobe Game 7 Boston, 2010. And that game, much like this game, a slugfest defensive battle and a really, really hard-fought game. And Boston in Game 7, much like Denver in Game 7, they said this superstar player, the score-first player, is not beating us by dropping 40. Now, Kobe in that Game 7 notoriously, of course, bad shooting, but still on the night, 23 points and grabbed 15 boards. And what did Kobe do late in the game? Made the timely pass to Ron Artest to seal the championship. In a Game 7, stats, percentages, overall field percentage really does not matter. All that matters is getting a W and doing it in any way possible. And the way Edwards impacted the game last night, outside of his scoring and his shooting, it was highly impressive. And late in the third quarter specifically, that crucial steal on Murray, the fast break dunk, a lot of loose balls tipped, and got some easy fast break buckets that really got him going late in the third quarter. And the biggest momentum shot of the game, in my view, was that buzzer beater 3 to end the third quarter. And I want to make one thing very clear right here. In the post-game Anthony Edwards, he said, quote, that he locked up Jamal. And a lot of the responses to Edwards saying this were, well, Jamal still had 35 and didn't lock anything down. And I wonder, did people actually watch the game closely? Edwards' defense on Murray, specifically the second half, he was playing fantastic defense. As looking at Edwards guarding Murray, Jamal, only 7 points, 3 of 7 shooting, with 3 turnovers. Denver's other players when guarded by Anthony Edwards were a whopping 1 of 7 on field goals. In this Game 7, Anthony Edwards held his opponents to 4 of 14 shooting. If that's not great defense, I don't know what is. And I know the question will be asked, was it a Denver collapse or a Minnesota win? And of course, like always, a combination of both. But from my view, Minnesota, they took this game and they won it on their defense. As once again, early in the third quarter, that lead, it ballooned to 20. And Minnesota, being a younger team, only having this core together for 2 seasons, they could have folded, packed it in, and really not fought back in this game. And playing the defending champions at home, if they did that, it just happens. But the T-Wolves, just time and time again, fought back, clawed, and eventually won the game because of their defense. And much like Game 1 and Game 2 in Denver, I thought Murray and Jokic were kind of playing a step and a half too fast, really out over their skis, rushing shots, and highly fatigued late in that game. Now, is it on them or Minnesota? I give all the credit to Minnesota and their defense. And speaking of defense, thank God, finally a Game 7 that's close and competitive and under 100 points. Look at that final score, a thing of beauty. 98-90. That right there is what basketball should be. When you see that score, teams not cracking 100 points, barely getting 90, defense was played and it was a hard-fought battle. And looking at the playoffs in general, teams this year are averaging 105.2 points per game, which is pretty decent. Now compare that number to the 2024 actual season. It was 114.2. That is nearly a 10-point drop from the season to the postseason. Now what does that tell you? Players in this era can play defense when they want to and when they're motivated. But the problem is, someone like Anthony Edwards who has that motivation, he's few and far between in this era. And looking at the post-game interview, one line that got really overlooked was Edwards saying, "I'm a two-way player and I play both ends." The NBA desperately needs that attitude and a player like Ant to make defense really mean something again. So when looking at this series in hindsight, a roller coaster of emotions, Minnesota up 2-0, Denver ties it 2-2, they go up 3-2, lose Game 6, then shockingly lose Game 7. One of the best series in recent history. And my only gripe with it, I wish it was the Western Conference Finals and not the second round. Because the stakes of this series felt much more heightened than a second round series. And depending on how things play out, this Game 7 in Denver, it could have been Game 7 of the actual finals. I'm not going to jump the gun too much, but it felt like that in the moment. Don't count out Boston, Dallas, and maybe Indiana, but this Game 7 felt like a championship game worthy of a trophy. And speaking of those other teams, the 3 superstars remaining are of course Edwards, who's 22, Luka 25, and Tatum 26. One of these guys in the next 4 weeks is have their legacy changed forever. They're going to go from a very good player, potential all-time great, to a certified champion and legend. And here's the crazy thing. If you told me Minnesota ran the table, they dominated, and won the championship in historic fashion, I'd believe you. If you told me Boston with Tatum, they finally got it done, got over the hump, I wouldn't blink at that. And even if Dallas won the championship, I'd be a tad surprised. But Luka, Kyrie, the role players, they're all going crazy. I could buy that. The only team I'm really not buying is the Pacers. No shade to them. So that right there is the end of the video. And once again, Anthony Edwards, despite the bad Game 7 shooting, I thought he played a phenomenal game and turned the tide on the defensive end. So, as always, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.